Hi YouTube community. I'm actually going to focus today's video on 5 keywords. So blame, accountability, toxic shame, toxic guilt, and acceptance. I guess maybe 6. Self-forgiveness in that umbrella. I think that there are 2 major divisions that keep people from taking accountability, and the division is the difference between blame and responsibility, and the difference between identity and behavior as far as anything you might be at fault for. So I'm going to start on one half and then I'm going to bleed into the other later. As far as things that are not your fault, a lot of this has to do with prior events where you didn't have power to take action, or childhood, or early developmental years, things like that. So I'm going to start with the umbrella of things that are not your fault and why that may be stopping you from taking accountability as an adult. So when it comes to early childhood, I won't break down all of the dynamics, but typically if you cannot take accountability for the things that happen to you or things that you might be messing up with as an adult, it'll probably, more than likely, never 100%, but more than likely you came from a childhood where you were constantly scapegoated, or you were looked at as the bad child or the black sheep or something. Like you had some identity of shame and guilt where maybe you had a perfectionist parent or an abusive parent, whatever it is. But you had some frame of identity that they put on you, that you are a bad person or you deserve bad things in some way, shape, or form. So the inability to take accountability as an adult actually heavily revolves around toxic shame and toxic guilt that is instilled in you as a child. And there's blame taking that was forced on you in prior years. This could also happen in adult relationships or early adult relationships too, but you have some figure of influence in your life that forced you to take blame for something, so you don't want to take accountability later because they are too closely linked in your brain to where you equate one with the sensation of the other. Because there's that red, green, blue cone. I forgot what it's called. Again, I'll post it in the description, but there's the cone of expansion where red is the negative vibes, blue is the kind of neutral vibes, and green are all the positive vibes that we aim to have. I forgot the name of this, but I'll post it in the description. But in red, the lowest vibrational energies are, I think the lowest on that is actually shame. So the reason why you can't take accountability would be in the umbrella of the blue section of neutral that gives you the pathway to get to the positive green section of that chart. So accountability would fall under the acceptance umbrella and neutrality, and you can't get there because you're stuck in the shame of what's beneath. And why that's happening is because what accountability says is the common idea: you are not to blame for the situation, or you could be, but 9 times out of 10, if there's something you don't want to take accountability for, it revolves around you having the idea that you have to take blame from something when you were a child or maybe in a bad situation that was not your fault. So in this context, what's being said is, this situation, you are not to blame, but you are accountable for where you walk after this. And learned helplessness is something that hits people pretty heavily in this cycle, because when you come from shame, when you come from the identity of shame and not just the behavior of, I did something wrong, so I feel guilty about this behavior. Guilt is attributed to the behavior. Shame is attributed to the identity. So when you grow up in a situation where you have a perfectionist parent, where you feel like you can't do anything right, or you have an abusive parent that makes you feel like there's something wrong with you. This is talked about a lot in therapy. Typically, when you have an abusive parent, you develop the framework as a child of, there must be something wrong with me. That's why I'm always punished as opposed to deserving love or whatever. So you'll have the subconscious framework of, I'm a bad kid, I'm a bad person, nobody wants me, whatever. So there's shame around being unwanted and unworthy. And then on top of that, you add perfectionism into that, or you add conditional love into that, such as maybe parents where you're only rewarded when you're achieving or are the highest achiever. You'll get a lot of identity of, I am shameful, I am not worthy, I am bad. And when people ask you in your adult life to take accountability for something, it's reminiscent of that pain that you feel, so you reject it a lot of the time. This is also common with people who cannot handle criticism in any way, shape, or form. So that will come up for you pretty heavily and will be a trigger in your adulthood, and you'll kind of naturally push it away from you or not be able to add it into your framework because you are already basically stuffed up with so much shame from those prior situations. And what I channeled from source with this, because I was journaling about this because I just released a lot of this stuff, is a lot of the time when you take accountability, it's that you deserve to have control of your own behavior and you deserve the right to own yourself. So the message that I had from source said this, or something along these lines. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was something like this. In taking accountability, you recognize that the blame is not on your shoulders, but you're taking responsibility for where you're going to walk after. And a lot of people try to conflate accountability with blame when they're two completely separate things. So for people who are not at fault for situations where they were misused, what I channeled from source was that in recognizing that you're taking accountability for your actions, your behaviors, your thoughts, and your emotions, now you're recognizing that I'm taking back something that was taken away from me before. So you're recognizing in taking accountability that the blame is on somebody or something else from your past, that yes, they are, and you can admit they are the cause of this action, but the result can be changed. So maybe they're the cause of that energy or to blame for that energy, and you can recognize that in taking accountability. But accountability says, I'm taking the reins back because I deserve to own myself. So accountability is about empowering yourself to own yourself again and to be in charge of yourself again. And this is the idea of learned helplessness I was talking about. So learned helplessness arises from this, or it's some idea of I am not in power. So the lack of taking accountability is actually your recognition that you're not in power or felt disempowered in the past. So again, taking accountability is the recognition that you are not to blame for the prior situation because you did not have power in that prior situation. But taking accountability says, okay, I didn't have power here, I wasn't to blame here, but now that I'm free, I deserve ownership of myself again, and I can control where I walk and what I go and where I go and what I think and what I feel. So the very nature of accountability is actually opposite. It's not blaming yourself. It's not judging yourself. It's actually recognizing that you're stepping back into a power that was stolen from you. And something that was stolen from you is never your fault, And yes, there are guilty behaviors or guilt associated with behaviors that we do in adulthood. When you take accountability, yes, it's okay to feel guilt temporarily for that behavior. You feel it so you can recognize it and then move on from it. But you should never feel shame. So if you have shame over doing something wrong, maybe that's something you want to release. And then if you're dealing with guilt over something you actually did wrong, then the solution would be self-forgiveness, and then recognizing, make it awareness of the problem, and then making amends for that problem. It's returning positive energy to somewhere where you might have taken or instilled negative energy. So there's that side of it. But in reference to this video, I really want to focus on people who feel helpless in what they think, say, or do, because that is a taught behavior where someone else is to blame for cultivating that in you. But again, by taking accountability, you say, well, I don't have to cultivate that anymore. Refusing to take accountability for that is when you still function under the paradigm of somebody else has control of what I think, feel, say, or do. And accountability is a very powerful tool in alleviating that and putting the reins back in your control. It's not, or back in your hand, I should say. It's not, if anything, I think it's a testament to the strength and the beauty of your character. And here's why. Because when somebody says you deserve to own yourself, you deserve to own your emotions, you deserve to own your psychology, you deserve to have that in your power, they're saying that you are deeply worthy of cultivating yourself and being the best version of yourself. So the golden version you see of yourself, they're telling you when they want you to take responsibility and accountability and make that happen, they're telling you, I love you so much that you're so deeply worthy of this in my eyes, that I care about you so much, that I hold you in such high regard, that I want you to do this so you can achieve that most beautiful version that you want to achieve in life. And they're telling you that you don't have to live in the mentality anymore that you're being controlled as opposed to controlling yourself. And if that's not somebody telling you they hold you to the gold standard because they see you as gold, I don't know what else to tell people. But the main thing that I want to focus on in this is, by taking accountability, you're saying I am worth the gold that I see myself as, and I am worthy, and I am deserving, and I am deserving to run my life, and I am deserving to have the power to make my life what I want it to be and feel the way that I want to feel. That's really all it is. And if you're accepting accountability, you're actually accepting that the malicious people in your life are really the ones to blame for putting you in that framework. You know, I understand and agree with the notion that any bad situation, except for maybe childhood, that you get yourself into is partially your fault. But I also agree with the notion that two things can be true at the same time. And I think when it comes to taking accountability, it becomes much easier to take responsibility and take accountability when you can recognize that, yes, maybe I was naive or hurt or desperate or lonely or whatever if you did this in a relationship in adulthood. But the other side can also be true, that even within that, I should, or humanity should, have a level of trust where if you can place a broken person in your hands and not misuse them, you know, the reality of that situation is people are heavily broken right now. We're not going to be for very long, and we're going to heal, and we're going to get better and become better people. It's evolution. It's just a matter of time and education and tools. But right now, we're leaning away from a state where people are so broken that they cannot be trusted not to take advantage of somebody who's pouring out love in a naive way. So while you might have been naive or lonely, the other truth is there, that even within that state, somebody should not be able to use you in your weakness. So when you take accountability for your life, you're not judging yourself for the first truth of, I didn't act in my best interest. Even though that is a truth, you can recognize it without judging yourself. But it's also accepting the other half of that equation of, even in my weakness, I should not have been used like that. It was not fair for me to have been used like that. And both of those things can be true at the same time. And I think using that as an exercise and accepting yourself in both sides of that, and accepting that you might have been in a period of weakness and that you were used, you're also accepting, when you take accountability, that it still wasn't fair for you to be used in that state, and it still was not right for you to be used in that state and taken advantage of just because you weren't in your strongest mindset, because it's still wrong no matter how weak you are. It's like touchy subjects, I'm going to bring it up though. It's like how we say a woman does not deserve to be raped even if she was drunk lying naked on the street. You know, the only person who would take advantage of somebody like that is somebody with a weak mindset who did not feel strong enough themselves to attain something in a moral way that they want. So they see an opportunity of weakness, and they feel, because their own weak state, that is the only thing they can conquer to gain what they need to gain in a very malicious way. So it's still the responsibility of the person who takes advantage of that woman even if she's in her most vulnerable state, you know? So I think with taking accountability, people need to remember that it's okay that you were in a weak place. It's okay that you were in a disempowered place, and you are really not to blame for that, because the world is so broken, and we're coming into our strength. I always want people to remember that side of it, but the world is so broken in its current state right now that you came into a system that was designed to break you and designed to make you think bad and feel bad, and you were thrown into something that you didn't have control over, and there's truth in that, and you want to recognize that and keep the internal value of how much of a warrior you are, even if you came out broken or bloodied or whatever, you know, whatever metaphor you want to use. If you came out wounded on the battlefield, but you're still standing, there's a lot of value in that. And the fact that you're still alive and still trying to function and still showing up every day in a system that was designed to make you helpless and make you disempowered, and the system is to blame for why we all are the way that we are, there's still accountability in saying, okay, well, now I recognize the system, I recognize what it's done to me. Now where do I want to go with it, and what tools can I find, and how can I change the way I think, how can I change the way I feel to walk forward with more positivity and happiness in my life. And I really want people to recognize that that's all taking accountability is you stepping forward and saying, yes, this other thing is to blame for breaking me, but now I'm responsible for adding some building blocks to my life.